Hey guys, I'll be updating my prediction for the 2022 Senate races, which are just a little bit over a year away. With primaries occurring next spring, we'll be able to have a very good sense of what the final matchups will be by next summer, which is just a couple of months away as well. But right now, we have a pretty good sense of who is going to be running against each other in many of these races so far. And today, I want to take a look at these races and where both parties stand in terms of winning in the balance of power in 2022. So I'm going to start off by filling in the solid states for both of these parties. So starting off with the Democratic Party, they're going to win all along the West Coast. Alex Padilla is likely to run for re-election in California, where he is very, very likely to win. He's not going to receive any sort of pushback that Dianne Feinstein received in 2018 when she ran for re-election for a fourth, fifth time. In the state of Hawaii, that's going to be solid as well, and so is the state of Illinois with Tammy Duckworth. In the state of New York, that's going to be Chuck Schumer's seat. That's going to be solid for the Democratic Party. Vermont with Patrick Leahy, Connecticut, and Maryland will also all be solid for the Democratic Party. For the GOP, we have the states of Idaho, Utah, North and South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, which Richard Shelby is retiring, but he'll be replaced by a Republican, and that Republican is very, very likely to win by a solid margin. Tim Scott in South Carolina is going to carry that state for the GOP. In 2020, of course, it was not a solid margin for the Republican Party. Lindsey Graham only won by 10.3% in a race that he had a very, very good chance of losing. So this was a shockingly good result for Lindsey Graham. But in 2016, as you can see, Tim Scott, the much more popular of the two Republican senators from South Carolina, he won by 23.6%, and he's very likely to win by at least 15% once again in 2022. So this puts the GOP up at 40 seats and the Democrats up at 45. Now, there are a couple of seats that I'm going to give to both of these parties right now. For the Democratic Party, I'm going to give them the state of Colorado as likely for Michael Bennet. Michael Bennet, he's not exactly the most charismatic person, and he is not the best campaigner either, but he has been able to win twice already in 2010 and 2016 for his seat. As you can see, 2016, Michael Bennet won by 5.7%, and 2010, he was able to win by 1.6%. So these are not the best margins, especially for a Democrat in the state of Colorado. He did basically do better. He did worse than Hillary Clinton in the state of Colorado in 2016. However, he was running in a much more competitive Senate race. 2020, Joe Biden won Colorado by 13.5%. And there's no way that Michael Bennet is going to do better than Joe Biden, but it is very, very likely that he is going to do better than he did in 2016. So I will be classifying the state of Colorado as likely for the Democratic Party. And so putting them up at 46 to GOP, I have 3-4 seats for them here as well. Starting off with the state of Indiana and Kentucky, I think both these states, they're going to go for the GOP. There's really no way that the Democratic Party is going to win. It's just that their incumbents are not exactly the most popular in their very Republican home states. In the state of Indiana, you have Todd Young, who won by just 9.7% in 2016, and Kentucky with Rand Paul, who won by just 14.5%. If you look at 2020, even Mitch McConnell was able to win by 19.5% against Amy McGrath. So 2016, this margin for Rand Paul really was a very, very weak margin. If you look at 2014, Mitch McConnell was even able to win by 15.5%. So definitely what we're seeing here is that both these candidates in Indiana and Kentucky, they're going to win their seats. It's just not going to be by the strongest margin. And finally, in the state of Iowa, this is going to be solid for the Republican Party. Previously this was a state to watch. However, as of right now, there really is nothing too notable about Iowa anymore because Chuck Grassley will be running, I believe, for a 7th term in the state of Iowa. So yeah, he's going to be running for a 7th or 8th term. I believe it's actually his 8th term. So in the state of Iowa, Chuck Grassley will be running once again. And so that basically means that the state of Iowa is going to be very solid for the Republican Party. 2016, he won by 24.4%. If you look at 2010, he won by 31%. And you go back to 2004, he was able to win in Iowa by 42.3%. So he has been winning in Iowa for a very long time. You go back, let's see, 1980, Chuck Grassley wins by 7.9% in 1980. I believe that was the first year in which he was elected. So Chuck Grassley has been in the Senate for a very, very long time. He hopes to remain until 2028. So yes, that will be an 8th term for Chuck Grassley in Iowa. So now I'm going to move on to the more competitive states, the states that you see here in gray. So I'm going to start off by taking a look at the state of Nevada. Currently, Catherine Cortez Masto will be running for re-election. She defeated Joe Heck in 2016 by 2.4%, the same margin that both Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton won Nevada in 2016 and 2020 on the presidential level. For the GOP, as of right now, Adam Laxalt is the current frontrunner, and as of right now, Catherine Cortez Masto has a 59% chance of retaining her seat in the U.S. Senate. She is not too controversial, and in the polling right now, she does defeat Laxalt by a margin of 4. You do have these 2 previous polls. However, this poll at the very top is more reliable, and so that this poll does put her up by 4%. And she is pretty likely to win her re-election nonetheless as an incumbent in a Democratic leaning state. So I'm going to categorize Nevada as currently as lead for the Democratic Party, putting them up at 47. Next up, I want to take a look at the state of Arizona, where Mark Kelly will be running for re-election. He won the 2020 special election in Arizona, defeating Martha McSally, so he was able to win a 2-year term until 2022, where he will now be up for re-election in 2022 to win his first full 6-year term. He is a former astronaut, and he won 51.2% of the votes in 2020, winning by over 2%. So he was able to win by a lean margin. But in 2024, he will likely face either Mark Brnovich or Blake Masters. Both of these candidates right now are they're the only 2 candidates in this race that really have a chance at winning as of right now, but of course others could declare in the coming months. Doug Ducey, the governor, is not going to be running, but the problem for Mark Brnovich is that him and Trump do not have the best relationship, so if Trump does endorse Blake Masters, that will not be good for his campaign. And for the race overall, we see similar numbers here to what we saw in Nevada, where currently Mark Kelly has a 60% chance of winning. And if you were to take a look at the polls that we've seen so far in Arizona, he really is polling very, very well, plus 9,747. I mean, against Mark Brnovich, he's up 10, 9, 11, 11, 11, 14, and 10 in the latest polls that we've seen. So really, Mark Kelly is doing very, very well for his re-election in 2022 as of right now. So we want to categorize Arizona as a lean state. Even though he's polling very, very well, it's very unlikely that we're going to see these types of results. He was polling like this in 2020 as well, if you do remember, against Martha McSally. He was up by these same sort of numbers, but in the very end, in 2020, you did see that Mark Kelly was only able to win by 2.3%. So definitely Mark Kelly is not going to win by these numbers, but I do think that he can retain the margin that he saw in 2020 with the current polling that we do see. Moving on now to the state of Alaska. I think it's going to be a pretty interesting race here, where Lisa Murkowski will be running for a 4th term. So Lisa Murkowski was first she was first appointed by her father, who was the former governor of the state, and in 2004, she ran for her first term. This was, he did defeat Tony Knowles with 48.6% of the votes there in 2004, so she was able to win her first 6-year term. 2010, she actually lost the Republican nomination because she is a less establishment Republican than many of others in the Senate, and she is somebody that will vote against her party if she feels like it. So Lisa Murkowski, with a writing campaign, was able to defeat the actual Republican nominee, Joe Miller. 2016, she did not receive that sort of challenge. Joe Miller became the nominee of the Libertarian Party in 2016, but Lisa Murkowski was still able to win. But 2022 will be different because 2022 we have her conflict with Donald Trump. Donald Trump has endorsed Kelly Tshibaka, who is her main opponent, another Republican, and there's a pretty good chance that Lisa Murkowski may actually lose the Republican nomination once again. But right now, current polling does not show that is likely to happen as of right now. And ranked choice voting will also be used in 2022, which heavily favors Lisa Murkowski because Democrats and Republicans will be putting her probably at least second choice, because she is the most moderate out of the three possible candidates. We're likely to see Kelly Tshibaka on the most conservative side, Lisa Murkowski in the middle with her established support after decades of serving Alaska, and then we have probably a Democrat, probably Al Gross for right now. Not exactly a Democrat, but an independent who will caucus with the Democrats, but Al Gross, he is, of course, on the more liberal side. So this ranked choice voting is going to work out pretty well for Lisa Murkowski in all likelihood, which is why I do think that she will end up winning this race definitely. She is also leading the polls right now by 9-10%. So I'm going to put it as likely for her, but as a whole for the GOP, it's going to be definitely a Republican that will be serving in Alaska come 2023. Moving on to the state of Missouri, we have a pretty interesting race here because Roy Blunt will not be running for re-election, elected once for a second time in 2016. He barely defeated Jason Kander, so he will be retiring in 2023, and he will not be running for another 6-year term. 2022, that means that there will be a primary for both parties. Eric Greens currently leads the GOP nomination. He is not the best candidate because of the scandals that he's had in the past that made him have to resign from the governorship of Missouri in 2018. And for the Democratic Party, Lucas Kunce is currently the frontrunner, but the frontrunner status has changed quite a lot over the last year in Missouri. So definitely, I think both these races are up for grabs for both parties. So we don't really have a concrete sort of race established yet between two candidates, but we can take a look at the latest polling between these possible candidates in Missouri, and what we will see is that the Republicans are leading by pretty comfortable margins, both Eric Schmidt and Eric Greitens. So for the state of Missouri currently, I'm going to put it as lean for the Republican Party because of how badly Roy Blunt did in 2016, as well as the fact that Eric Greitens is not the best candidate and he is not polling within likely territory. So this puts the GOP up at 45, the Democrats is 48 seats. And next, I want to move on to take a look at the state of New Hampshire, which I think will have probably one of the most interesting races in 2022. Maggie Hassan will be running for re-election after defeating Republican incumbent Kelly Ayotte in 2016. She currently is expected to lose this race according to her odds, and this is because Chris Sununu, the Republican governor, the very popular Republican governor of this more Democratic-leaning state, he is very, very likely to run. He has not announced yet officially, but he is very likely to run in 2022, and he'll be a very strong challenger to Maggie Hassan, who currently I do believe will actually lose this race, because if you do look at the latest polls and just everything about these races, Maggie Hassan is yet to poll ahead of Chris Sununu. In any of these polls that have been released over the last couple of months, she is always polling in second place. So I will categorize New Hampshire as tilt for Chris Sununu because I do think that he will run, and I think that he will eventually win, making this the first and only flip that we'll see for the Republican Party. All right, moving on to the state of North Carolina, Richard Burr, the Republican incumbent, will not be running for re-election. I think that this will not be the best scenario for the GOP because Richard Burr is an incumbent that will probably do better than his replacement. But for his replacement right now, Ted Budd has he has received the nomination of Donald Trump, which is why he is doing so well as of right now. I do think he will win against Pat McCrory, who is the former governor that lost to Roy Cooper in 2016. So he is not exactly the best candidate for this race, but Pat McCrory 29% to Ted Budd 65% chance of winning right now. While for the Democrats, we have Terry Beasley and Jeff Jackson still up there at the very top battling this out. We've seen it get closer with Jackson being the front runner previously, but this race is definitely still up in the air as we still have a couple of months to go. We've seen no polls out of North Carolina, but right now I would categorize it as lean for the Republican Party because the state is not shifting left fast enough for the Democratic Party to be able to catch up and win North Carolina in 2022. Moving on to the state of Georgia, where currently Raphael Warnock will be running for re-election after defeating Kelly Loeffler in the 2020 special election. So same thing with Mark Kelly. He will have to run again in 2022 to win his first 6-year term, and he will likely be running against Herschel Walker, who is a former NFL star and endorsed by Donald Trump before he even announced. So he has announced by now, which is why his chances went up so much last month, but he will be running, and he probably will win the Republican nomination, but against Raphael Warnock, he is still lacking just a little bit. Raphael Warnock being the first Democrat elected to the Senate from Georgia in almost 3 decades. So if you do look at the latest polls, Warnock is defeating Walker by 2%. So these are not the best numbers for the GOP, especially in the state that used to be a stronghold for them. But right now, I will categorize the state of Georgia as tilt for the Democratic Party. And finally, in Florida, this is going to be lean for the GOP. Marco Rubio will be running for re-election here, very likely against Val Demings. Latest polls, they all do show him in front. There's really no chance that I think that he will lose. I think that Marco Rubio will definitely win his re-election in a third term to the U.S. Senate from Florida. But latest polls do show that he is not performing as well against Val Demings as we may have expected, because there were polls released, as you can see, this first one where he was up by 21%. So as of right now, I think that he will definitely win, but the margin may actually be less than 7%, less than the margin that he saw in 2016, because I think Val Demings is a better candidate than whoever he ran against in 2016, which is Patrick Murphy. So this puts the GOP up at 48, Democrats at 49. I will be giving the GOP the state of Ohio, where Rob Portman will not be running for another term here. He won by a very large margin in 2016, but he will be retiring. And in 2022, we have a pretty crowded primary for the GOP. 3 big candidates who all have a very good chance of winning right now with 40, 30, and 20%. For the Democrats here, 92% chance it's Tim Ryan. I think it will be Tim Ryan because there's really nobody else in Ohio. He will not be running for another 2-year term in the House, so he will be giving everything up for this Senate run. I think he will lose. Because at the end of the day, this is still the state of Ohio. You do have Sherrod Brown, but Tim Ryan is not Sherrod Brown. Tim Ryan does lead actually in some of these polls, but really at the end of the day, this is still Ohio, and this is a state that is trending further and further to the right. It's no longer the bellwether state that it was before. I think that Paul Ryan can definitely put up a pretty good fight, but as of right now, I don't see too much hope in his campaign. Moving on to the 2 final states of Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. For the state of Wisconsin right now, Ron Johnson will be running for re-election. That is very likely. He has not officially announced, but he does have an 80% chance of retaining that Republican nomination, which means that he probably will actually run. He has been hinting at it for a couple of months now. And in 2016, when he ran for his second term, he did promise that he would not be running again in 2022, but after getting pressured by Trump and many of those in the GOP, he probably is going to run, probably against Mandela Barnes or Alex Larcy. Sarah Godlewski's chances have dropped off a cliff, but Mandela Barnes currently is the front runner, and if you do look at the head-to-head polling right now, this is a very, very tight race. It's currently even, and I think that with the fact that Joe Biden was able to win this state in 2020 back on the presidential level, I think that right now I will categorize Wisconsin as tilt for the Democratic Party, but Ron Johnson definitely still has a very, very good chance at retaining his seat as well. And finally, in the state of Pennsylvania, I think this is not too hard. I do think that currently this is a leading categorization for the Dems. Right now, Pat Toomey will not be running for re-election, so another retiring Republican. And for the Republican nomination now that will have to occur to replace Pat Toomey for the GOP, Sean Parnell has received the nomination of Donald Trump, and that's why he spiked from 52 all the way up to 80% against Jeff Bartos. So Sean Parnell currently, I think that with Trump's support, I think he will likely be the nominee. And on the Democratic side, John Fetterman, who is a very strong candidate and the current lieutenant governor of the state. So John Fetterman right now is just destroying everyone else in the polls. For Pennsylvania, he's up 9, up 8, up 10. He did tie with Sean Parnell in this one poll, but there are many other polls that do show him quite a bit ahead. So I will categorize this as lean for the Democratic Party, putting them up at 51 to the GOP at 49 as of right now. So this is my updated prediction for the 2022 Senate elections. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you like it down below if you enjoyed it. Comment down below which party you think will win in 2022 and why. Subscribe to our channel if you have not. Again, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.